directly at Boeing. And you were
That's
there for
right.
like almost 4 years plus.
Yeah, so I interned there in um summer of 2016, like between like finished my bachelor's and master's. My internship was in Huntsville.
Hmm.
And then I worked there from January 2017 through June 2020. And one thing, like, I don't know, I hope this has come up on the pod before, but USC being an E-high, so Boeing has this program, the Engineering Accelerated Hiring Initiative, E-high.
Mm.
And what's really neat about it is that Boeing would come to USC, and in a week time, you basically knew if you had an internship or a full-time job. And I thought that was, and they did during Career Fair Week, and I loved that program because you didn't have to wait through the, um, wait through like the internship application. Boeing would come to USC with like specific recs tailored for USC students, and it was like a select pool of like 20 schools that USC was a part of. I always thought, like, in hindsight, how cool was that? And I took advantage of it, and that's how I got my first Boeing gig in Huntsville. Um, that role was super like a good combination of the bachelor's and master's degree because it was analyzing um stress and forces and dynamics on parts of the engine section of Boeing Space Launch System rocket, which is the predecessor or the successor to like the Saturn V, like the
Got it.
launch
Yeah.
vehicle that's going to get us to Mars and beyond.
Right.
Um and What I realized though, like through the internship and the first 6 months, like working in Huntsville, that first job, was that I hated sitting behind a desk and like looking at this like small piece of like the small bracket in a CAD model and saying like what were the forces and then like the answer being, oh, like so we broke our margins, well sharpen the pencil, increase like figure out what assumptions need to be different for us to meet, the NASA requirements. And that's all well and good. Some people love that work, but for me, I I I hated just sitting at a desk. I hated not touching hardware, not physically being present. Um, and that's what my next role was, moving to Charleston, South Carolina, because Boeing had set up a huge, and still has, like a huge 787 factory there. Um, and my next job was just being on the production line,
Wow.
working with metallic and uh, plastic 3D printers, like building production support equipment for our mechanics. And that really scratched the itch of like being physically in the operation, like seeing the real problems, being able to react quickly, having something new every day, but also like it scratched the itch for me of the people side. And that's like kind of going back to VSA and Viterbi freshman academy coaching. Like
Mm.
that was one of my
Yeah.
favorite parts of USC was that it wasn't just in the books engineering, building rockets, doing the engineering side. There was this element of of serving others and being, like just working cross-functionally to deliver like super cool as a VSA, delivering super cool experiences for incoming high school or outgoing high school seniors.
Yeah.
So at Boeing, like I was able to parlay that into doing the same thing but just for mechanics, right? Like how do we make the experience of being a 787 mechanic super easy? Um, Eventually realized that Boeing's a big company and its nucleus is in Seattle. I was lucky enough to be a part of a rotation program at Boeing, like an early career engineering rotation program.
Cool.
So eventually, came up to the Seattle area where Boeing has its 737 plant down in Renton. It's
Hmm.
major production facilities up in Everett for the 87, 777, 777X, 767 freighters. Um, and did a few other various production support roles in different factory lines before finishing my time at Boeing doing metallic 3D printing. Um,
Wow.
which is like we'll get to the Amazon story in a second, which is
Yeah.
like kind of crazy that like I went from like there was a point in like May 2020 where I was like, do I go back to USC and get a PhD in metallurgy? Like this is really cool stuff, doing the FAA certification for titanium powder bed um 3D printing for airplane parts and figuring out like what had to be true to create a stable and repeatable process the FAA would be comfortable with
Yeah.
to fly fatigue critical 3D printed airplane parts.
Wow.
We were in super early stages. It was super cool work. Um, and Yeah, that was when I reflect my career, that was the most engineering job I had. But
Yeah.
it was a ton of fun. Just you'd go in every day. So I would be surrounded by like 8 powdered 3D printers with titanium and aluminum. And At the time, Dr. Melissa Orm, I can't remember if she's still a USC. I know she's a USC alum. I can't remember if she's still she might have been an adjunct professor, might still be a professor. Um,
Mhm.
she was our vice president, and that was super cool because we were changing the future of
Oh, at Boeing.
at Boeing. Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So Dr. Orm, just really neat to have,
What's
her
funny is that
leading.
she was the commencement speaker for commencement 2 years ago.
Oh, super cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
very cool. But yeah, like what a like really really neat application of some of like the engineering just principles we took away from USC.